there is no equality without equity. People in your life that are gonna feed you, not take from you. Become an expert before trying to be recognized as an expert.
How's it going, guys? Welcome to another episode of Secrets to Silent Success. Today we have the one and only Michael Ledo. How you doing this morning, brother?
I'm good, man. How you doing?
Doing all right, man. So we'll jump right into it if that's okay.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so CEO and founder of Rise Sports Advisors. Tell me a little bit about your journey in the sports industry, how Rise came about, and what gap are you guys looking to fill?
Yeah, absolutely, man. So I'm originally from Fort Wayne, Indiana, moved to Dallas about 3.5 years ago. I had a client in Jalen Smith, who was my first client out of Notre Dame. We're from the same place, he was playing for the Dallas Cowboys, and so I was frequently coming to Dallas all the time, and just fell in love with it, man.
Oh, wow.
From a standpoint of the balance of the culture, and then also business.
Okay.
And then a lot of professional athletes are here.
Sure.
So it made sense, and it's a central location. I travel a lot.
Yeah.
So it just made a lot of good sense for me, so I made that move. But originally from Fort Wayne, as I stated, and you know, I was an athlete my whole life. I was a running back, defensive back, and played Division II NAIA ball in Indiana, had some success, played in a couple national championships, was a two-time All-American, and then got a degree in business administration with a focus in marketing. And I was just an entrepreneur. And I had that bug, and I was blessed to have some good people around me to cultivate that.
Sure.
And so I started my first company in college with one of my very close friends growing up in high school. He was a doctor in physical therapy. And I was just that entrepreneur, marketing, athlete guy. And so we launched a business that I think changed the culture in our community for athletes. We focused on developing them physically, mentally, and spiritually. And ran that company for 15 years, ended up merging with a $2 billion hospital, ended up selling the majority stake of that business to a private equity firm. And then when I sold it to the private equity firm, I got exposed to mergers, acquisitions, business development, strategy. That became a new passion of mine, and that I was just like, yo, something different. And so Jalen, who was, projected to be a top 5 draft pick out of Notre Dame, was #1 defensive player in the country. Before his injury in college, he had a huge injury coming out of Notre Dame in the bowl game, and that's like now changed why guys don't play in bowl games and stuff. And so when that happened, he was just always curious. I was like, since he was 14, I was his mentor, and he wanted to know about business. Great student. And so I was like, yo, I want to really help athletes become athlete entrepreneurs. I saw this need and this gap where they were just playing ball, but no one was really educating or cultivating them on how to become entrepreneurs and how to do it, and providing the infrastructure and the intentionality to do that. So that's how Rise Advisors came about, and how I began to focus on that.
Awesome. Tell me a little bit about the name Rise. Where does the name come from?
Yeah, man. I think back then and even now, my thing was I want to elevate the culture. I want to elevate it, so we want to rise together. And that's how it came about, man, where, I can't stand, for me, my first business was always about being more than an athlete. This one's all about being more than an athlete. My purpose never changed, just the function in which how I do it. It's always been to elevate athletes. And so now it's more as entrepreneurs. And I just felt like, we need to rise, man. And a lot of people are always trying to tell us what the status quo of, what we can do, what we can be, and put us in a box. So that's how the name came about.
Awesome. So you talked about having and running the business for 15 plus years. Now you have Rise, and hey, it is risen, right? You're thriving. But let's take it back a little bit. When you are first starting this business, what did it look like from an entrepreneurial standpoint, building that infrastructure, building those systems, building that team? What challenges maybe you all faced, and how were you able to overcome those as an entrepreneur?
Man, bro. So like for us, I think one was the transition of moving from Indiana to Dallas.
Okay.
It was that where I was at was a great place for a lot of people, but it just wasn't one good for me personally, where I could operate at my highest vibrations and my highest creativity. And then also, it wasn't a great place to work with professional athletes. Like you got to go where it's like being in a pond in an ocean. You know what I'm saying? So I think one, relocation, proximity to the right people, right things, whether if it's athletes, entrepreneurs, business. I think the other thing was, taking the time to build your infrastructure and the right people and the right team to create culture. Culture is really, really, I think that culture produces, the culture you have will determine the outcomes and the performance that you have. And so I've taken a slow time to build things the right way. I wasn't in a rush to profit a lot of money right away or grow to a certain. It was like, let's just build this right. And I feel like, we're on year 8 now coming up, and I feel like we're at the point now where we're just like, they always talk about that J when you do business, that J curve, or where you just kind of come in and boom, it just kind of goes. And we're kind of experiencing that right now.
Awesome.
Due to that, I think. But yeah, the biggest challenges has just been like getting access to the right clients, finding the right clients. We don't want to recruit our own problems. Everybody's not for us. Just because you're a top 10 pick, just because you're a Pro Bowler, All Pro, do you really want to build a legacy for your family? Do you really want accountability? Do you really want to learn? Do you want to embrace those processes and value them the way you value on the field, on the court play?
Let me ask you this. I know for us personally in the media industry, we work with athletes, entertainers, and even the big brands. And one of the things that is our challenge is building trust with those brands, with those individuals. What are you all doing to build trust, to be able to bring on the right clientele, to your point?
It's simple. It's transparency and education. That's a great question, man. And it's a very difficult thing to do, especially when you're dealing with a lot of, which we do, we work with everybody, but primarily with the number of black athletes there are, the percentage of what we represent, a lot of the clients are black. And when you look at our past traumas or trust issues or people that have misled them, I think it all starts with transparency of transparency of them seeing what's going on with their businesses, their finances, checks and balances on what we're doing, what other people are doing, accountability, the fundamental principle of accountability, transparency, and then education. I think that the more that you are transparent and then you educate them, then the more confidence and reassurance that they have. A lot of time people aren't really taking the time and intentionality to educate them. And so they know what's going on. It's a lot of like, trust me, fast talk, but then move, and then there's no checks and balances, and we don't operate like that. We want them to trust us, but we do feel like fundamentally in any business, it's about trusting you, but then also verifying me. So there's trust and there's verification of what I said I was going to do.
And I don't want to go too much on a tangent from the question to be prepared, but I thought it was interesting that you mentioned education, because any lifelong learner, athletes, they all want to be coached. They want to be educated, right? Man. They want to be educated.
So why my whole life I've been coached? So like why, and I get a little passionate about this, especially when you deal with young black men, why my whole life I've been coached on how to dribble, how to hit a baseball, how to tackle somebody, how to catch a ball, how to throw a ball, and I've developed the ability to how to receive that information, but then why is there this assumption that you can't teach me business? I can't understand finance, I can't understand that. Why did I not have the aptitude? The whole thing about why, way back in the day, you didn't have black quarterbacks. And so, because they couldn't process, that's because they're not exercising that muscle.
Yeah.
They're not getting the experience to do that. And everything's about repetition. What do you learn? How many free throws you get, how many free throws you shooting, how many times you throwing that ball. You got to get repetition. We're giving them repetition at business, repetition at finance, repetition at the structure and the organization. And so my goal is that when these brothers are 30, 35, whatever, it's kind of like they've got an MBA or a PhD in entrepreneurship, and they just happen to have a lot of bread and a lot of capital to exercise.
To leverage it. Yeah, absolutely. So we had a podcast interview with Zach Dowds. I'm not sure you're familiar with Zach Dowds, but played for my Houston Texans back when I was a little kid in the early 2010s. And he's gone on to do some amazing things and doing some amazing things. So he was doing real estate in California, one of the toughest markets. He was on a reality TV show. Now he's in the sports agency world. And one of the things that he talked about in our podcast was like, hey, in the early 2010s, I didn't have the social media and the way to brand myself while I'm doing what I'm doing on the field, right? And he was like, he feels like a lot of the younger guys aren't educated on it, and they're not leveraging what they're doing on the field to be able to do things off the field while they're still playing, right? When it comes to social media, when it comes to brands and things of that nature, I was gonna see if you had any thoughts on how, individuals can use that platform that they have while they're still playing to be able to leverage for the future to start building that legacy post-career.
Yeah, the branding is like the access. Social media is a double-edged sword, boy. That thing can be a tool that helps you reach more people, change lives, build wealth, but then at the same time, it'll be something that'll destroy your life, and so it's all about your intentionality and your focus of what's important to you and what you value. And I think that with athletes every day, man, we always say, like at Rise, we want to elevate the culture because the culture is destructive for the athletes, the entertainers. It's very, it's very hard to have clear direction with all the white noise, all the distractions, all the, like they feel this need, like a lot of people, to when you don't really haven't identified your purpose and your calling and things in life, you can easily just get swayed any kind of way. And then if the culture is this, I don't want to buck the culture. You see what I'm saying? So I gotta buy the $500,000 chain because I gotta fit into the culture. Which that might not be producing good wealth, good outcomes, good peace, whatever it may be. So that's kind of my thought on that. But I think that guys can utilize that. We help them. What we try to do is we try to reverse engineer. So we try to help guys identify what are your interests, what are your passions, where do you want to go from our consulting realm of what we do at Rise on strategy. The legacy strategy is what we call it. And then we said, where do you want to go 10 years from now? Let's re-engineer. Reverse engineer that. So we're going to reverse engineer your legacy strategy, where you want to go, and then we're going to help build the brand that associates with what you said that you want to do. So the accountability that we hold guys to isn't what we think is best for them. I mean, we do have best practices and recommendations, but we're actually holding them accountable to what they actually said they want for themselves, their families, their communities, and then we make sure that the brand aligns with that.
Got you. One of the most interesting things that you talked about in our phone call, kind of the pre-interview, was your godfather and your uncle, Eugene Parker. Just the greatness that he was as one of the first black sports agents representing greats like, Deion Sanders, Emmitt Smith, so on and so forth. Tell me some of maybe the ideologies or even the methodologies that you were able to learn from him over the years that you are applying today in Rise to continue to rise the culture and these athletes.
Yeah, one of the things that I learned so much from Eugene. I mean, he was I was blessed to have him in close proximity to me. Both from Fort Wayne, Indiana. I was really close to him from a family standpoint, and he poured into me when it came to books and education and different things, and I was a sponge in that. But I got to watch his movement, right? And he was a very meek person. I'm a lot more aggressive naturally and different things. But, you know, even I used to wonder how he was such a good basketball player or even such a good negotiator, because that's not what he presented. He was very meek, very humble, and he didn't mind being in the background, but he was an expert at contract negotiation. He wasn't trying to be anybody else. He just did what he did. He used to always tell me, I found my sweet spot. Like when he played on the basketball court like Robert Autry, you know, you catch, shoot. He wasn't trying to go in the post.
Yeah.
He wasn't trying to do whatever. He knew his sweet spot. And I think a lot of the time we as people have to identify what our DNA is. Like, what's your DNA? And I like to break it down like this. DNA is based on your desire, a need, and your ability. And at that point, when you find that middle intersection, that's your sweet spot. And you got to stay in that sweet spot. And so Eugene found that. And so it led him to greatness, right? And I think that the biggest thing I get from him was that, like staying in my sweet spot, become an expert before trying to be recognized as an expert. You know, really, I spent
That's a bar, man. Especially with the way social media is today, man. Yeah, become an expert. Yes, that's the bar.
So,
sorry to cut you off.
So you're good. No, real talk. So I feel like for me, I wanted to spend 8 years and still spending years to build up my expertise, my credibility, my, my value proposition.
Yeah.
Now when I walk in what I do, I can confidently say, not arrogantly, but with a humble confidence, that I'm the best at what I do in my niche. I'm not saying I'm for everybody. I'm not saying that other people can't have success without me, but I know that I'm the best at what I do.
Yeah.
And so I just got to find the people that need what I provide. Yeah. And then there's good value alignment, and we win together.
Got you. Yeah. So outside of Rise and what I'm seeing you do with the players, the consulting, I also see you on stage, giving some of those gems like you just dropped. One of the things that you talk about is human capital. Right? It was a recent video I seen on Instagram, talked about right people, right place, right time. Yeah. You started to go into like, hey, I'm not going to go anywhere that I'm not wanted, nowhere I can't speak authentically. I want you to dive a little deeper on that quote. What were you trying to convey to that audience, and what is the meaning behind human capital, right place, right time, right people?
Boy, that's heavy. That's a heavy one for me because of my story, you know, and what I've experienced. Sometimes when you go through different seasons of your life, and it could be your family, it could be your community, it could be past mistakes you've made, right? Or whatever it may be, man, you can feel lonely. You can feel isolated. You can feel like there's no hope, right? And a lot of things lead people to, whatever it's depression, you had hope deferred, you gave up on stuff, whatever it may be. But I really believe when people talk about, as a man of faith and a spiritual person, my relationship with God is my relationship with God. But when I do connect with a space or an environment, even your energy right now, the energy's good. When you can do that, there's a vibration, there's a whatever. When you're in a bad place like that, it makes it very difficult to produce high vibrating things in a low vibrating environment. And so for me, I won't live my life trying to convince people of my value, who I am, my calling, my gift. I'm just going to show you. I'm going to believe it. And then I'm going to believe it. I'm going to exercise that gift, right? I'm going to honor that gift, and then you just going to see it. And I think that one of the things that we do at times is trying to convince people or get their buy-in so that we can believe, and so on and so forth. So I think right people, right? You need people in your life that are going to feed you, not take from you. I always say you want pushers, not pullers. You know what I'm saying? So you want people in your life that they're going to push you forward, not pull you back. So you got to find those people, right? And then I think, you're talking about the right place. I talked about why I moved from Indiana to Dallas, right? So that's the right place. What's the fertile ground? What's the fertile ground for me, for what I'm called to be? Might be different for another man. But I got to find that fertile ground for me. And then, right people, right place, right time. I think the timing sometimes is challenging because we got to allow ourselves to go through different seasons. One of my close friends, Jeff King, good friend of mine back in Indiana, we did a podcast together one time, and he talked about the seasons of now. And he talked about how you got to go through different seasons of life. And it's hard for us to embrace those things. But when I look back at my difficult seasons, when I learned the most about business was in my largest failures in business.
Yeah.
Those large failures are what taught me lessons, created why I moved the way I move, why I value things. If I wouldn't have had that, I wouldn't have the movement, the experience, or the discernment in which I have now for business.
Yeah, one of the things that I love that you said, you talked about, it's hard to have positive high vibrations if you're in a low vibration environment, right? One of the things, I go back and I do my little public speaking as well, and I always say you are a product of how you respond to your environment. Right? So you the one, hey, I moved from Fort Wayne. I've done this, I've done that. I want you to get a little more granular, a little more practical. What makes you move, right, to respond to your environment? Not necessarily the physical move, but makes you get up off the chair to change your environment, right, when you got those low vibrations?
Yeah, I think that, if I'll be honest with you, and I can't say I had all this courage.
Yeah.
My spirit and my mind had already moved from Indiana while I was living there for 3 years. So my physical form of my body was there, but every time I made a trip to Dallas, it was feeling like this was more home than what that was when I was going back, right? So I had already moved mentally, spiritually, but my body was still there. And then what happened was circumstances. And this thing called, this thing and this wonderful person called God, right, had kind of pushed me. Circumstances had said, I'm trying to push you, so I got a little bit of help. I had that pusher, this guy, right? And so I went through that situation, and that kind of helped me kind of make the transition, and it just made so much sense. My uncle told me this, man. My uncle told me this that we were talking about earlier. I'll never forget this. He said, if you honor God, he'll honor your dreams. And he said to me a long time ago, he had said, a lot of men are out here chasing their dreams while their families are suffering, right? So a lot of men are out here chasing dreams while families suffer. He said, if God wants you to do something, he will manifest it. He'll manifest. You won't have to I think I'm taking this chance. No. He manifested it for me. He said, no, Michael, I'm gonna show you that I want you to do this because I'm gonna make it to where you can do that. And that's kind of what led to me making that move and leaving. I think a lot of times, I think it's cool that people want to stay and they want to help their hood and they want to do whatever. But for me, at least, a lot of that was my ego. A lot of it was my ego of wanting to prove people wrong and prove that I could do something. It's this prove thing of people that doubted you wrong and all this different stuff. And when I removed that and was like, yo, y'all can have that sandbox. Y'all can do what y'all do. Maybe it's not, maybe that was my season, there, and you got to kind of move on. Sometimes it's tough for us to let our ego go and accept that God's saying, okay, it's transition time.
I want to switch gears a little bit to what you all are doing with MEI, because I know you've had the entrepreneurial bug in you. Now you're trying to put it in others. I think it's interesting. Me personally, growing up in a single parent household, we didn't own the car we drove, didn't own the house, the apartments that we lived in, didn't even own the TV that we watched. My story is I didn't learn the word equity until I was 19. You never owned anything, let alone had a business or intellectual property or something that's gonna pay your residuals, right? So I want to talk about what you all are doing with MEI, with Jalen, the type of information, education, access that you're trying to give to those of color to get them in the right spot, especially I think entrepreneurship can kill the culture, kill the community, right? That's my ideology, but I want to hear from you and what's your thoughts.
So there is no equality without equity. Right?
Two different E's.
Same thing. And they aligned. And I think, you talk about Jalen, my first client, my ace, he's a game changer, and he's the blueprint, for what we've been able to develop. MEI, man, we started MEI out as I think 5 years ago now. We had 3 showcases in Indiana, Texas, and Florida. We invested $1.4 million into 12 minority entrepreneur businesses. And we did pre-seed, seed capital into those companies at a venture level. We have some exciting stuff about to be announced and come out here in the next 60 to 90 days that we're finalizing right now. A private fund that we're going to launch that we're excited about, that before we did pre-seed, seed investments. Now we're going to be doing more Series A, Series B level investments of a much larger amount of money that we're excited about. And so we're bringing some people that are best in class in the industry and that have way more experience than we do in doing this. You need great people to do great things, and so we've been out looking. But the minority entrepreneurship focuses with MEI was the Minority Entrepreneurship Institute, and so that's what we're doing, was to close the educational economic gap. There's too large of a gap, right? I heard a brother tell me just recently this weekend that when you hear about the word gap and the language gap of our young black kids versus wealthy white kids or whatever, the word gap, as far as our vocabulary of what we know, and so it also leads to equity. And so I think what we're launching now is the MEI Capital Fund. So we have the institute, that was the seed, the seed and the pre-seed, and the educational components with the showcases we've done. Now we're launching the MEI Capital Fund. That's a lot. It's more of a capital focus, much larger capital that we're going to do, and we're excited about that. And that's going to be on the private. The other side, the MEI Institute, was more impact investing, where it wasn't about really a return. It was about leveling the playing field. This is going to be about, now once we've done that, and somebody's went from, you've went from playing for Alabama in college football, now you're going to the first round draft pick. Do we have the funds and the resources to continue to support that cause as you go through stages entrepreneurially? And so we're excited about that. I'm excited about that for Jalen. The goal is that he already has avenues and resources before his career is over that are already in place. We're not reactive, we're proactive in that.
Absolutely, absolutely, so I love that, what you all are doing with MEI from a micro perspective. I want to take it to a macro perspective for a second, if we can. One of the quotes that keep me up at night, figuratively, is you can take a mule to the water, but you can't make the mule drink, right? And I think one of the things that you said that was interesting is you can't have equality without equity. From a macro perspective, where you talk about the culture, where you talk about the community, how do you think we can, as a community of minorities, a community of black people, get the equity that we need to get the equality that we need? What are your thought processes around that? Because what I typically run into is you can, disseminate all the information, but if it's not ingested, digested, it's null and void. Do you have any thoughts around how we can get the culture, the community, where we need it to be from an equity standpoint?
I do have a thought on that. It's pretty basic too. You think about it. Jay-Z got equity?
I would say so. Absolutely.
Right?
I would say so.
How you think he got it?
I'm going to say education and work. That would be my 2 reasons.
Right. But when you look at it, he got it because he is a top 5 rapper of all time. Some people would say in his era and his time, he was the greatest rapper of all time. Right? People can arguably say that about Jay-Z. You think LeBron James got equity?
Absolutely.
If you ask me, my dog's named LeBron. I think LeBron is the greatest basketball player of all time. Right?
We'll say he is.
Okay. Deion Sanders. You got equity?
Absolutely.
You got equity. The greatest defensive back football player of all time. The way our community needs to get equity and build wealth is become the best at what you do. First and foremost, become a practitioner of your skill. Become the best instead of focusing on being recognized as the best. As I said earlier, if you focus on something, do you think they wanted to pay LeBron as much as they pay LeBron? No, but they don't have no choice.
Mm-hmm. It's indispensable.
He's indispensable. So he's become the best. Find your niche. Focus. When we grow up, Bishop Jakes was talking about this a couple weeks ago at church about when you come up from our community, you learn how to be a hustler. So you do this, you do this, you do this, you do this, but that's adverse to becoming an expert. Yeah. Being a hustler and being an expert are two different things. You got to know how to put the hustle down and focus on becoming an expert, which it requires focus. It requires discipline. And you develop that expertise, then that expertise will be the trunk to the tree that allows for you to have entrepreneurial branches, right? But you're trying to have the branches before you had a trunk.
Yeah.
So take the time to develop that expertise. So find out your expertise is different than my expertise. You trying to be like me trying to be like you is a distraction from my gift.
Yeah.
Right? And so if you can focus on that and do that entrepreneurially, then what you do is you protect that expertise.
Yeah.
And there's a great book out there called E-Myth by Michael Gerber. And it talks about the difference between investors, entrepreneurs, and managers. And in many cases, just because you're a great entrepreneur and you have developed a skill set for media and production doesn't mean you're the best manager.
Sure.
Right? And so you got to know what your niche is and then surround yourself with the team of people. It's the ecosystem. When you develop, our community has to develop a strong supporting ecosystem that can support this gift and this talent that we've developed.
Yeah.
And then once they can do that, then you'll build wealth. And then you protect that and you manage it.
Yeah. Now you were speaking directly to me right there, brother. Like that's,
yeah.
Hey, you talk about right people, right place, right time. Like just hearing that, that hit a whole personal chord. As you were, like you say, you trying to build branches before you build a trunk, right? So now that definitely hit home. Last two things I got for you, again, going back to talking to the black athlete, talking to the young black man. You say black kings, right? You talk about we're more than athletes, we're intellects as well. You talk about not being put in the box that the media puts us in, and your ultimate goal is to help black kings reach their full potential, right? I want you to tell me a little bit about these young black men reaching their full potential. What are you doing to help that? What's your passion around that? And how can we get these young black men to reach their full potential?
Yeah, I think, again, it goes back to those seasons and that experience I talked about.
Yeah.
I went through seasons where I was a decent athlete. I was in a predominantly white school. I assimilated to environment and culture. Then I went through a season where a lot of my brothers and my friends and my community around me that were combined from Christians, Muslims, or some of them, I don't know what they was, but outside of just good people and good men. But that community really educated me on black culture, my history, my background. So I went through these seasons, then went through business, my business education. And so it's all kind of come together for me. And I think there is a great deal of trauma. There is a great deal of deception of what we are and what we're not. And there's a great deal of design, of design and strategy to keep us focused on different things and away from certain things. And so I want my guys, my athletes, and the ones that I serve that are, all of them, but then specifically as we're talking about the young black men, to have peaceful and prosperous lives. Yeah. And so it starts with education, and then it starts with boundaries, protection, so on and so forth. I think it's identity. It all starts with really, who am I? What has God called me to be, instead of just what is all that's being told to me type like thing, instead of receiving. And so, man, it's patience, it's love. Yeah. It's patience, it's love, it's education, man. It's like, hey, I see you. I see you. I understand you. There's no judgment, but let's get this thing right.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
and that's really what I'm called to do with the people that I work with, man. And then I think it's all about connection.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's about a connection. It's about having the right structure, having the right receipt, and be credible, as I like to say.
Sure.
But when it comes to that relatability, that connection.
Got you. Last thing I got for you is called the Secrets to Silent Success podcast. So I would ask you, Mr. Michael Ledo, what is your secret to success?
My secret to success. Well, I think that it comes down to my faith.
Yeah.
It comes down to being a lifelong learner. That I don't know. The more I learn, the more I find out how little I know.
Mm-hmm.
That process. So being a lifelong learner, my faith, and really humility. You know, the ability to just be real about what you don't know, what you do know, and then really, man, my ecosystem.
Yeah.
You know, developing my ecosystem, valuing my ecosystem, human capital, as we talk about, and protecting it.
Yeah. Awesome. We'll leave it there, brother. I
Yeah.
appreciate you, man.
Appreciate you,
It was
bro.
a pleasure.
Honor, man.